Welcome to the second session of the day. As we are running short of time, let us start immediately. There are 4 speakers for the session, and the session theme is developing distributed web applications, internet application development on the web. Let me welcome Ms. Gunela Astrink, our first speaker. Gunela Astrink has 20 years of experience in disability and technology issues both in Australia and internationally. Gunela was National Coordinator of TEDICO, Telecommunications and Disability Consumer Representation, for over 10 years. Currently, her company GSA, Information Consultants, does a variety of national and international projects on e-accessibility to improve the lives of people with disabilities. Gunela also is a director on the board of the Internet Society of Australia. Let me ask Gunela to deliver her talk. And also I request the speakers to keep to a maximum of about 15 to 20 minutes.
So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, and to the Internet Society for the awarding of a community grants project to ISOC Australia, where I delivered a disability awareness workshop as part of a broader chapters workshop on the weekend. But today I want to speak about designing applications to meet the needs of the whole community. I want to ask you some questions. Have you been on a noisy street and you can't hear your phone ringing? Travelling and you can't make yourself understood or understand others? Not being able to see a screen in strong light? Now, these might be temporary annoyances to you, but they are permanent issues for many people with disabilities. If you imagine somebody who has a hearing impairment, who can't hear their phone, and for someone who might be deaf and can't speak in a spoken language but uses sign language, and someone who has a vision impairment and can't read the text on a screen. So what do we do about that? Well, we can design applications on the internet and devices that work for people with disabilities and for more people in the community. And we call that inclusive design. Inclusive design is really thinking outside of the square in the way that we often design products to meet the particular business uses or young people that we imagine are the key uses of an application or a device. Instead, designing applications that meet the needs of more people in the community will also help people with disabilities. And how do you do that? Well, there are key principles of inclusive design or universal design, and they were actually set up by a university in the US many years ago, basically for architectural design, and they have been adopted by the IT industry. And I've included a URL there that you can look at to get more information about the 7 principles, but some of them might be tolerance to error when you're using a device or an application, intuitive use. It means that a person can pick up a device and use it fairly automatically, and there are a number of other design factors as well. Let's look at some examples of current inclusive design. We are in this hotel. It's quite accessible. It has a level entrance, there's no steps, which is great for a person carrying bags or delivering goods, and it's vital for a person using a wheelchair. And it's something we may not think about as we come into this building, but that is inclusive design. You don't really have to think about it, it's just there. And if we look at conferences like Internet Governance Forum and ICANN and online conferencing. For example, ISOC uses WebEx online conferencing systems. And for a particular meeting recently, we included real-time text captioning, and that's also done on other conferences like IGF and ICANN. Now, this is really good for people who may not follow the language and not be a native English speaker, as many of these conferences internationally are in English. And it's vital for a person with a hearing impairment who can't hear the actual presentation. Now, there's a number of internet devices now that have built-in accessibility features, and the iPad, which is actually what I'm using to give this presentation. And bear with me if, as we go along, I'm learning how to use it, but it's really good in that a lot of blind people can use it. It has built-in accessibility features. They weren't add-ons. They were designed right from the start. So when you do your settings, you can choose accessibility, you can choose a speech synthesizer as part of a screen reading software for blind people. You can increase the text size, you can change the contrast. And I'm not here to promote Apple by any means, but if there are other companies that are producing devices as accessible with built-in accessibility features, I'm very happy to talk about them too. So sometimes we can call these online curb ramps, because you may know that there are curb ramps from the pavement to the street in many places, and that's good for people in wheelchairs and for delivery carts and so forth. But online we can call that online curb ramps. On the other hand, we can also look at disability innovation that leads to mainstream products, because there are sometimes quite complex requirements that people with disabilities might have. And so some very innovative thought was put into how to make IT accessible for particular groups of people. And so some particular accessibility tools that started off as very expensive devices are now mainstream applications and much, much cheaper. One example is speech recognition for people with limited or no hand movement. And we know now that speech recognition, voice recognition, for example, with Dragon Dictate, is something that is a relatively inexpensive tool. When it was first developed, particularly for people with limited or no hand movement, it might have cost $10,000. So to bring these specialised products into the mainstream market is really quite exciting too. Another example is the scanner. Scanner is ubiquitous now, but it started off as a Kurzweil reading machine for blind people, so that written text could actually be put on the glass, scanned, and then a voice synthesizer actually read out that text. And again, that was a very expensive device, and now scanners are relatively inexpensive. Now, websites, it's something that we all use every day. We share information, we have fun, we communicate. We've heard a lot about this over the last day, and we will continue hearing about it. And it's just integral to how we work and play. But blind people, as I mentioned before, using screen reading software with a speech synthesizer can participate on an equal level using that software. But websites need to be designed so that screen readers can use them. And we were fortunate on the weekend to have a representative, the secretary of the Sri Lanka Federation of the Visually Handicapped, demonstrate for ISOC chapter members what it was like to use screen reading software, and to show when a website is accessible and how she would use it, and the huge barriers when a website is designed that doesn't meet international guidelines. And those international guidelines are called the W3C Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And I put in a link there for you to have a look at. There are also web authoring accessibility guidelines. So if you're developing, for example, a content management system, there are guidelines there to help you to make those particular systems accessible. So it's just thinking about it, and it's that awareness that's really important. Now, communications for deaf people. Deaf people